Welcome back, everyone, to part 6. This will be the final part in creating our electrical Revit panel. If you've ever tried making Revit panel before or any other electrical family without doing any nesting, you might have been frustrated by the inability to lift all of the components off the ground by a single parameter. They just don't seem to work. Well, that key step is nesting your Revit family into a blank Revit family and doing one last parameter called elevation to lift it off the ground. That key step is really important in being able to do a preset default elevation value. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we're going to do is save as the family we just created. This will be the final family that you use, so we're going to name it not part, all the others have been part. We're going to name this one wall-mounted gear and go ahead and save. We're going to delete everything out of here because we don't need it. We just want the outer case, except make sure you keep the insertion reference planes that come by default. Let's also delete the nested symbols and the clearance zone family. So now we basically have just a blank canvas. But we have saved all the parameters that we've used. So go ahead and open your part panel and load it in. This is the nesting part. And align it to the insertion points. To make sure that they're perfectly aligned, we're going to use the Align tool. First click the reference plane and then the panel and padlock. Same with the back and padlock. Now we know that they're perfectly aligned. Change this reference plane to strong reference so that it will cling to a wall when you're in project world. Let's go to a left elevation, and this was left over from before from the save as, so we'll just delete it. And let's create a new reference plane. This is going to be the height at which the panel will be when we use the elevation command or the elevation parameter. Let's go ahead and tile view. You can do that by typing WT and check out the center front back reference plane in both views. Unpin it so we can extend it and then repin it again. And let's use the Align tool to align this. I'm going to do this in slow-mo. So first get your pin the reference plane, get your Align tool. First click the plane and then wait until that blue highlight of the reference plane that's in the nested family. And click that. It will jump up. And there you go, it jumped up. That aligns the two reference planes, one in the parent, one in the nested. And go ahead and lock that. Now we can unpin this plane. And this reference plane, we're going to make a strong reference and call it top elevation. That way we know what it's for. Get a dimension tool and dimension to the reference level to that top elevation. And let's create a parameter. We're going to call it elevation to top of panel. Make sure it's instance. Great, so we just finished the most important part. Let's go ahead and set this elevation to an even number. How about 60? And then becomes the fun part. Since we did a save as, we still have our parameters. So if you click on the nested family, we can go to Dist Panel and look at the right little button. Hook that up to Distribution Panel. Do the same with Recessed. We're just mapping one parameter that we made to the parent version of that parameter. So hook that up to Recessed. White panel up to white panel. You'll notice that we're missing black panel in the graphics area. Next, we need to map all our dimensions. We got gear width, gear height, gear depth, front clearance, and top zone height, as well as panel name. Just hook those up to their matching parameters in the parent value. We don't really need this Mark III, so just delete that. And you'll notice that black panel is under other, so we need to fix that. Go into Edit Family of our part panel, Family on the right, click Family Types, and scroll all the way down to the bottom to the other category where we have Black Panel. We're going to modify this parameter so that it's in the group of graphics and not other. We'll have to do this twice since we did a Save As. So click OK, and then we'll get into Project, write the existing version. And then in the new family, we will map Black Panel in the correct location to Black Panel. But we'll need to go to Family Types here and make sure Black Panel is actually in Graphics section as in this parent family as well. Last but not least, we need to map the panel name front text on-off button to the parent panel. And all this time I've been talking about making sure I have instance-based for nesting. Well, now comes the part where we actually change any parameters that we need to be type instead of instance. So the parameters I want to be type are gear width. So we'll make that type. Gear height, make that type. And gear depth, make that type. The rest I'd like to remain instance-based. Now, lastly, we will add a connector. And rather than adding it to 3D, I'm going to add it to a work plane. That way, if I ever need to change anything or rethink, it doesn't upset that. So we'll use top elevation reference plane. And that way, we can easily replace the family if we and not change the connector. So click the connector. We're going to map out these parameters here that are on the connector. So first make sure it's balanced. That's important. Number of poles, we will map this to a parameter. Just call it number of poles. Most of these are intended for if this electrical connector is being used on a fan for a load that will be circuited up to a panel. Since this is a panel family and may be used as a load or a panel, I need to make sure both options are available. So your panel or your family might be different, but I'm setting it both up so that they have a choice. For voltage, it's a bit of a tricky situation because there's already voltage as a parameter. So I'm going to type in voltage underscore X for now. And we'll go check this out in the family types. So you can see the first voltage that's used if this family is used for a panel, and then voltage X is if it's used for load. So I'm actually going to call that just volts. Next, let's set up a parent load. And again, this is for if it's a load and not a panel. I use a shared parameter, but you can just call yours a parent load. Save your project. Next, we're going to go to family types again, and we're actually going to create some types that you see in the project world. Let's go ahead and close some of these windows. Family types, you'll click New and uncheck the ones that don't apply. So for example, distribution and recess don't apply to surface panel boards. We do recess panel board, we want recess checked. We want other, so that's going to be a white panel, not a black panel. Recess to other, make sure recess checked. Okay, so we're good there. Let's save. So on my screen right now, I didn't record it, but on my other screen, I'm doing a copy of the file that we just saved a couple times to make some different versions, and as well as a backup version. And I've split off our family into two different families now. One is going to be a regular panel, and one's going to be a distribution panel. If you want to keep yours as a single family without default values, you can go ahead and do that, or you can make them as two different types, but I'm going to make them as two different families. For our regular panel board, we don't need distribution panels, so we can delete that. We can also delete it in our nested family, so we'll just take distribution panel and uncheck it permanently so that it's not going to show up. Press save, and then we're going to switch to our distribution panel family. So you'll see on the top of my window wall mounted here dist for distribution, We're going to delete the white panel, black panel from the distribution version of this family. Same thing with the nested family. Just make sure that black panel is off and white panel is off. We're going to take distribution panel and put it on none since we don't need it. We can just leave it always on. And we will remove these two parameters since this is always going to be a distribution panel, and we can delete all the types and create a new type just called distribution panel board. I'm going to set some default values for the distribution board that are larger than the regular panel board. That will be default values when someone uses it. Just above the Family Types button, it looks like a little folder, is a place where you can decide whether you want it to have a panel board type or a switchboard type. This is up to you and what you're going to use your family for. You can also change the panel board schedule from 1 column to 2 column. I personally would use 2 columns. We set it here to 1 column, but remember that you cannot change it after you've used this family and circuited to it. So be sure to think long and hard about what you want before you circuit your project using this family. Thanks so much for sticking through it. I know it was long, 6 episodes. You now have a complete working family that you can use in your projects for a electrical panel. It is not wall hosted, which is really, really good if you need to use it on a background which is linked, unlike the ones that come in the library. It also has optional clearance zones that you can use to make sure people don't place their stuff in front of your panels. It can be used with a black symbol. It can be used as a distribution hatch panel. It can be used as white if you want to use it as a FACP, a lighting control panel, a disconnect, any other item that you might have on the wall that you need to circuit to another panel. And we hope that you really enjoyed this and you learned a lot. Please let me know in the comments below if you have any questions and I can try to get to them. Thanks for watching.